Let's finish it.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of The Closing Pitch. My name is Spiker Helms, and this is a show about people, culture, and how to create a winning lifestyle. Dave is across from me, and we have a special guest, the wonderful Adam Jahnsen. How can I throw 95 miles an hour?
Very difficult. It's a very complex
I
process.
I want to do it tomorrow.
You just jumped right into it.
I'm not the guy for you. I'm not the guy for you. We can, can pass
You're
you
telling
on to
me
someone
you don't have the magic pill where I can just literally. I want it to be like what's that movie? I think it's a Justin Timberlake movie where they take a pill and then they end up becoming like superhumans.
Okay.
Is that Justin Timberlake?
No, are you talking about the one where, was it Bradley Cooper took the pill and he was really smart?
Yes, that's what I want, but I want to throw 100 miles per hour, not 95.
That's a good
I'm
movie.
not the guy for you. We can, I wish it were that easy, but
Guys,
unfortunately it's not.
we have Adam Jahnsen with us, Ace Pitching Performance or Baseball Academy.
Ace Baseball Development.
I hear
0 for 3.
0 for 3. He's why I hate you.
So whenever we started,
I've known you forever since you were like a little guy, and now I'm just done.
it was Ace Pitching Academy back whenever we first started. We also started taking on more position guys, catchers, infielders.
Okay.
So I thought it was only right to change it to Ace Baseball Development.
I wanna get into the whole pitching development side of things when it comes to velocity. Obviously, that's a huge topic. We've brought on a doctor, an orthopedic. We're going to be bringing on a chiropractor here shortly with you.
Yes.
And that's going to be on the Tiger interview series. And then also, I'm actually going to bring on another doctor who does PRP and STEM. I'm just trying to get every aspect of the arm just because it's a huge topic. A lot of people don't have solid information when it comes to pitching. And I think just having expert advice, because I only know so much.
There's a lot out there.
All I knew is
A lot of information.
All I knew is I wanted to crush home runs off these guys, and that's all I wanted to do. My pitching career ended in high school. So, first off, what do you think of this all these no hitters being thrown?
It's unbelievable. I mean, obviously.
Do you think it has to deal with the arms, or do you think it has to deal with like the hitting philosophy?
I think both. I will be the first one to tell you I don't know much about hitting. I don't necessarily like hitters. But I think it's both. I think the game has evolved so much where there's metrics for everything. There's data for everything. Scouting reports are a big thing, as they always were. Mm-hmm. I think there's so much out there, so much information to gather on players these days. So the pitchers know the hitters know the pitchers. Pitchers are obviously, I think, winning in the grand scheme of things right now. It is hard to be a hitter, Yeah, I mean, it's sort of unbelievable, but like knowing where the game has gone, it's not really surprising.
I think it has to do to like the philosophy of hitters, because I'm thinking like, how many times has a pitcher been in a pressure situation, like a major pressure situation this year, and then constantly they have like 2 or 3 of them throughout the game. It seems like there's only like maybe one,
right?
If that,
right?
And then. Like, I'm thinking to myself, if I have the ball and there's nobody on base and these guys are just trying to hit home runs, if he gets me, that's a 1-run shot. We come back and then we put up another 2 runs. I'm in a good spot. There's not a lot of pressure baseball being put on these guys, like runners. Jason Grilli had it with Tim Jones in one of his interviews where Jason was like, "This is bash ball. It's not baseball. It's bash ball. Let's see how far we can hit home runs and hit doubles, like because that's what gets." Butts in the seats.
Well, I mean, that's what also gets you paid.
That's true.
I mean, you hit 300 and hit 5 home runs and hit 60 RBIs, you're in the minor leagues.
Right.
You're not getting paid. But you hit 38 home runs and bat 240, and you're a multimillionaire.
Well, even the college game is moving to that route.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's getting into, because we have the metal in our hands. Yeah. Let's see how many home runs we can absolutely hit. It feels like it's going back to like the 80s. Oh, it's like going in cycles.
100%. Right. Well, I think it has to do a lot, and I'm sure we'll get into this topic today without diving too much into it now. But I mean, you train high school guys like we do, and I mean, just look at the trickle down effect of it. Major leaguers are throwing 96 to 100 with movement, and then they're tunneling pitches off those pitches that are breaking 20 feet before they get to the plate at 88. I mean, like if you're a hitter in the major leagues, if you're not guessing zones, I don't know how you hit anymore. I just don't know how you do it. So
I mean, tunneling is just crazy.
yeah,
Because I mean, if you can't see,
you can't see it.
So Nick Petrie, who pitched for us at Missouri State, he could tunnel in 3 different arm angles, and he was doing that before anyone was mentioning tunneling.
Yeah.
But he
Right.
could do it from 3/4
Yeah.
side and then down super below. It's just like, how do you hit that?
It's insane.
When you have a movement that goes in towards your hands and then a movement that goes outside your hands.
It's insane.
Do you think they're going to move the mound back?
I sure hope not.
I hope not. I hope not.
I don't think that would be.
I'm all for changing the game, but there's some stuff I don't think you need to touch.
I think that foot would make a world of difference. I think you'd see more arm injuries. I think you'd see there'd be more issues, and I think you'd see successes out of that, in my opinion.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I think it all comes in cycles. Hitters will catch up, and then pitchers will have to readjust, and
Right.
it's just a game of cycles. And I mean, now I think we said it in a podcast maybe 2 or 3 ago that this is probably the most exciting baseball version that we've ever seen. Don't you want to see power arms with nasty stuff, and don't you want to see guys getting up there like Ronald Acuna, who's dropping 480-foot tanks off 98-mile-per-hour fastballs? I mean, I think it's in a great spot.
Well, I've been a very horrible podcast host. We have not even given Adam a
Let's
chance
have-
to
talk about it.
The listener on the other end's like, well, that's great that this guy does. I know he does pitching. He has this company called Ace. Whoa, what else? What's his
Let's jump
backstory?
into the game of baseball.
And then, Adam, give me like an elevator pitch. Give me your origin story and tell the people what you do.
I guess going back to my playing days, I went to Pacific High School, played for Jeff Reed, who's still there. One of the better coaches I've ever played for. Then went on to Forest Park back when they had a team, and then I went to Xavier. I was there for 2 years, 2002, 2003. After that, I got to play in the Frontier League with the Gateway Grizzlies in 03. Pitched fairly well. Got myself into Cardinal spring training, single A spring training in 04. Probably 3 years up to 5 years prior to that, I battled arm injuries. As a kid, I was the kid that threw really hard at a young age. Didn't really use my lower half, nor did I know how. Caught up to me. I mean, I probably got into spring training fairly banged up. Went through about 3 weeks of spring training, got released. Velocity was down. Obviously, the shoulder was kind of bothering me a little bit. And then actually I was at another Frontier League game after I had my surgery and saw Aaron Jaworski, obviously owner of the Tigers and Balls and Strikes. He gave me my first baseball job working baseball camps, Balls and Strikes camps, which led to lessons. Basically from 2004 to 2015, mostly private lessons, half-an-hour lessons where you saw kids once a week. Some group stuff, again, also baseball camps. So that's kind of how I got into this business.
So did you have your own baseball camps?
No.
So you did the Balls and Strikes
I
camps?
strictly was a contract instructor at Balls and Strikes. Worked full-time for, I think, roughly 3-4 years. Kind of split my time at the Balls and Strikes Baldwin, Balls and Strikes O'Fallon. And then, kind of broke back off to being a contract instructor again. And then in 2016, we created ACE. I think the biggest reason was, again, back then, it was mostly that private lesson model.
Yeah.
See a kid for
That
half
was the
an
only
hour.
thing. That was
It was
the
the
only
only
thing
thing
around. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, which it worked. It was very valuable. At the same time, I think some customers almost tried to rely on coming once a week for that half an hour, thinking that might kind of fix all the problems, which, as we know, doesn't really work. You got to take it home with you. You got to practice it. So us starting ACE, the biggest reason was try to create small groups. Again, I was a private lesson guy. Really enjoyed having a kid one-on-one. So me going to small groups, it was a big change. You almost feel like you're not giving the kids enough attention when there's more of them in front of you. However, we went to a model where each session they were in was an hour session. We saw most kids up to 3 times a week. So what that meant was more quality reps, more information we could give them. Us actually starting in October going through February, that allowed us to help build those guys up for high school tryouts.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, again, private lessons, I mean, that was the model. I mean, it was going great. Everyone did them. It's just I wasn't convinced that was the best way to go about helping pitchers develop.
Yeah. How long had you been thinking about doing that? Like, obviously, you'd seen, and I don't want to call it an issue. Like, I don't want to sit here and bash private lessons because I think there's a certain value to them.
Without a doubt.
I think that, for some people, that's a great model, and there's some good information and value. And like you said, if you take that information and run with it, they'll help.
That's the biggest thing.
They will help.
Yep.
But obviously, you were sitting here having done this the amount of years that you've done, coach pitching. You had to see some issues in the overall development of players, and especially for the guys that you currently train now, which I would label as probably guys who just have more time and want to put more time and learn more about the aspect of pitching at a younger age.
Definitely.
What'd you see? What was bothering you out there?
Just, seeing kids come back the following week, sometimes in the same condition that you left them in. Like you said, I truly believe in private lessons. I used to always tell my clients that, basically come to us to get your homework. I mean, it's what you take from us, the knowledge, but you have to do it back home, at practice. It has to be almost a lifestyle. So again, I truly do believe in private lessons. It's a lot easier when you demand, kids coming in 2 or 3 times a week, but also still getting work in outside of there too. I tell these guys, I mean, if you do it the right way, you can throw a baseball 7 days a week. As long as you have your intensities matched up. It's not a high intensity every day. You're not pitching every single day. There is a way to make that work. So I think that's been the biggest benefit to our company is trying to basically create that culture of you got to get out there and do it. Hold yourself accountable. It's on you. Ask as many questions as you want, but just get out and put in as many quality reps as you can.
Well, the business model feels like there's 2 types, right? You have your private lessons, and then you have your group training. I think customers, there's a huge market out there. I think each customer has to figure out what works for them.
Right.
And also, I think about it as tools. You have group training, which is a tool, and then you have lessons that's a tool. One-on-one instruction versus being in a group. One-on-one is kind of like going to a private tutor and getting some things figured out, and then you're on your merry way, right? Where I feel like group training is always a consistent overall, we're going to just make this a lifestyle.
Right.
Yep.
Which, again, Fitzmaurice was on our podcast twice. He has that saying, like, it's a lifestyle. You have to continually operate and do the things inside of that lifestyle, and you're going to find those results, which I find extremely important for an athlete. Like, again, whether you are an athlete that plays multiple sports or you want to say, hey, baseball's my thing, which is where we're going to go down this route with like more specifics like high school versus youth and trying to really figure it out. Before we jump into that, what are the principles that you go by when it comes to ACE and going into like the business aspect?
Our biggest principles is, I mean, it's basically everyone has their own needs. Even though many of these kids share the same movement patterns, same work ethic, there are things inside of each one of those that make each kid different. So our core principles, I mean, like a big thing is I want all of us to listen. I think sometimes we get caught up in teaching so much that we're telling the kids what they should be doing. We want to also listen to their needs, whether it's goals. So every off season, I have our guys fill out a questionnaire and basically rank in order what they're trying to get out of the program. Obviously, the number one thing is always gain velo. Which
Isn't that funny how that's always number one?
It drives me crazy.
Do you think it's because like when they're at the field and Johnny, who throws, let's just say he's 14 years old and throws 83, and then everyone's like, oh, I really love Johnny when he pitches because he throws that fastball super fast.
Yeah, they equate velo as the best pitcher.
Without a doubt. And some of those guys don't throw many strikes.
Yeah.
But that's their best guy.
But that's the guy,
That's
right?
their best guy.
That's the dude.
Right.
I think we're just innately humans are attracted to speed. Think about cars.
Speed, power.
Anything, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the guy who hits one home run in the season is the best player, even though he just hit 250.
Oh yeah,
He lost their 1-4-10 shot. Don't you remember?
Right. So we do pride ourselves on listening to the client because they'll tell us a lot. And then obviously you're creating that program that best fits them, which that's something else too is, what best fits them is always changing. It's not as easy as, hey, let's get you in, get you assessed. Here's your program. Our biggest thing is I think we have a pretty good feel on when to call an audible. Yeah. Meaning, you have to hand them a program. They have to have structure. But there comes a time where you need to change that program. Either that drill is too advanced, it might be too easy, so we have to jump in and call the audible. Whereas if we just hand them a program, it's great to be on a program, without a doubt. But it can also hurt you because if you aren't changing with your needs, what are you really doing?
I think that's what you guys have done really, really well over the past 5 years is that you've given, obviously structure is important.
Right.
And having an initial structure, I think I've found that most young athletes really don't even have an understanding of their path.
Right.
So they don't know the structure that they're going on. But then where I think some programs go wrong, where I think your program goes right, is after that structure is given, then there's so much uniqueness to their individual structures that you guys give because every dude is different.
Oh, and they change daily.
Yeah.
They won't move the same way back-to-back days very often.
Right.
So you have to jump in and kind of, because we want these guys independently following their own program because we have to teach them, accountability. They have to know this so when spring baseball starts and we're not there very often, they have a plan. Mm-hmm. But we also have to jump in. Like I think, some of the best coaching we do is watching from afar and then basically not talking. Or talking when we need to talk because we don't want to be a crush. We don't want to, hold their hand. But at the same time, some of these kids need more attention. Yep. You do have to jump in because if they're doing something the wrong way, which is very, very common, it's normal, we have to jump in to kind of make that correction without, again, becoming a crush.
Mm-hmm. You know what I think it is that programs struggle with this is it's the business model. Mm-hmm. So you're trying to figure out how can I do more volume, but also not lose the product itself or the service because you only have so much time in a day.
I struggle with that every day.
Yeah. And I think that's where like the customer kind of gets hurt because you don't know whether that program or that business is trying to produce a lot of volume or if they're trying to produce a quality product. And I think from a teaching standpoint, it's extremely hard. And because you only have again, kids get off at 3:00 on a school day. Mm-hmm. Most kids can get to us around 4:35, maybe. So then you literally have a time frame from 5 to let's say 9. Mm-hmm. That's literally the time frame. That's all you got.
Right.
Where a lot of guys will just be like, all right, here's the program. All right, next guy. Here's the program. Next guy. Here's the program.
Without a doubt, because we do. The reality is we do have these kids for about an hour. Mm-hmm. Because then all these kids also go lift afterwards too. So they're in there for 2 hours. You have homework. Most of these kids play, more than one sport. So it's very, very, I'm not going to lie, it's very, very fatiguing, keeping up with all the kids. But what I think we do a great job with, especially in season. So now that kids have played all spring, summer baseball is about to start. When they come into us, we have them check in. Mm-hmm. Basically telling us what they've done outside of the program, let's say the previous 2 days, 3 days. That way they're not doing double. I don't want kids who throw practice all day to then come to us right afterwards and then throw double. They also tell us basically how they feel, scale from 1 to 5. 5, the arm feels great. 1, it's not feeling too good. Mm-hmm. So we actually have them check in because we want as much information as possible. Because I always tell our guys, we really don't know what's walking through that door every day, how much sleep they had, if they're eating right, what they really did throwing. Because I think some kids can be good at telling us what we want to hear. Mm-hmm. There's so many factors that we can't control, but we try to get as much information as possible. That way, that particular day, we set them up with the right workout.
You need to get them a whoop strap.
What's that?
You need to get them a whoop strap.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, do you know what whoop is?
No idea.
Oh my God!
So they say that they are doing that now. So Well, do you want to explain what Whoop is?
Yeah. So for listeners that don't know, and Adam,
Yeah.
Whoop is a company that gives you a bracelet, and that bracelet measures everything that could possibly go on for your body, athletic.
Sleep time, sleep quality, how much
Nice.
REM sleep you got. Then it takes into like consideration when you woke up, how active you were throughout the day, and then it gives you like a recovery rating.
And how and you
So,
can
like-
you can list like if you're stressed or anything like that.
Yeah.
And how do you spell that?
WHOOP.
HOOP.
Yes, and there's different. Whoop is not the only
Yeah.
company.
There's like, so for example, one of our former players, Eric Miller's in the Phillies, and you know Eric.
Yep.
One day he came in over the offseason. He was wearing something looked like my wedding ring.
I thought it was a mood ring.
I know. on his right index finger, and I'm like, is that some like new fashion symbol you're trying on, Eric? Like what you got going on there, buddy?
Was he wearing it on his pinky?
No, it was on his index finger on his right hand. I'm like, what is that? And he goes, it's my Aura ring. I go, what is an Aura ring, buddy? And so they basically
Tell me more. I'm intrigued.
it's basically the same thing as the Whoop, and it's like something that the Phillies are like making a lot of their, not forcing, but actively encouraging
Right.
a lot of their players to wear.
Nice.
Because he would be like, I'd wake up in the morning after, let's say I've had a productive night's sleep. I got my 8 hours or whatever they suggest, and I'll wake up and it'll be like, yeah, you're at 94% recovery. You're gonna have a great day. And he's like, dude, I would have like,
Wow.
so productive. And there's some days where he's like, maybe I was out a little late or I was doing something, and I wake up and it was, you're at 53%. You're gonna hit the struggle bus today, buddy. But it's crazy how you can track that stuff.
How do we get those on every high school
Yeah,
kid?
I
That would
know.
Make our jobs a lot easier.
It would-
Unbelievable.
it
What is
would.
Oh,
We
it'd be
talked about that
fantastic.
right before we started, though. That's the data. That's like,
Yeah.
if you don't believe that that's going to be in the game and trickle down in like 5-6 years, whew,
Data helps,
It's
man.
gonna happen.
It really
Yep.
does. Like, obviously, we bring Blast on a lot to the show,
yeah.
and every time I talk to him, it just makes more sense. On like, I need to use this at some degree. It could be a small amount or it could be a massive amount,
Right.
but I can make those adjustments a lot faster for a kid and unlock that potential. And obviously, when you unlock somebody and then they start trusting you more, that you have that person for life.
Right.
They really come back to you for advice.
Right.
Example, Tommy Woods. He texted me the other day and he wants to come and hit for a little bit and just wants me to see his swing. Back when I was playing, I didn't go back to my instructor. I just didn't.
Right.
Because I was
You moved on. At
I
that
moved
point.
on.
Yeah.
I was at the highest level. I was at D1. So those guys have to know. But
Yeah.
now it's getting to a point where you're having real good expert advice
Oh, yeah.
at the club level.
Oh yeah.
Without a doubt.
What problem have you saw in the industry that you're trying to solve?
Like currently.
Because like we mentioned it a little bit, but like you start jumping off the deep end and saying, all right, I got this nice job over here. I'm doing lessons. I'm doing camps.
And by the way, can I say something? Adam was one of the biggest names and is one of the biggest names in St. Louis before you ever started Ace. I mean, I was maybe 4 or 5 years into lessons at that point before you started Ace Academy. And I mean, Adam was easily one of the most popular pitching instructors in St. Louis, had a huge name built up. So when you made that decision to go do your program, I mean, that's a total shift
Oh yeah.
in
Oh,
what
yeah.
your business life was like, and then
Right.
obviously, what you're trying to do with the industry.
Because
Right.
I think there's a lot of people out there, especially athletes, like they're afraid to get out of that comfort zone and jump off the deep
Without a
end
doubt.
and like say, all right, I'm going to go do this thing right now. Like think about us. We decided to not go a traditional route where our friends were going a traditional route, going to corporate 500 jobs or doing their thing, but we went to small business. You did the same thing, small business, and in baseball.
Yep.
Right.
Like that's a major risk. And then you add on top of that risk and say, I'm going to start my own business.
Without a doubt. I mean, it was tough. I mean, I guess the big thing is when you have a passion, you're basically not afraid to fail because you have that much confidence that even though it's different, even though it's changed, it's going to be difficult to get the consumer to think a little bit differently. For instance, private lessons. I mean, again, you're one-on-one with the kid the entire time.
Yep.
It's just you and the kid. So on the surface, that looks like that's the best way. And it's still a very good way. So going to small groups, I struggled with oh man, is the parent going to think I'm not watching their kid? They're paying money for this. Like in a lesson, in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, they're paying by the minute, by the second. If I'm not on the entire time, will they think it's worth it?
I always feel like if I'm not talking,
Without a doubt.
you're pretty much like, why am I paying this guy?
Right.
And that's the biggest thing is whenever we started ACE and went the small group model, it started with just high school kids. It still is mainly high school kids. We got college guys, we got pro guys, but it was just high school from October through February. So I think there were 3 kids that very first year that quit the program after October because we weren't pitching yet. I'm like, well, it's a pitching program.
We can
okay?
talk about that
It's
for
a,
hours,
it's a
buddy.
pitching program.
That had to freak you out. You're like, oh crap.
It did kind of freak me out, but I'm thinking, you know what? If we're trying to kind of change the culture and the mindset, we're going to have some kids that fall off, and
They're not for me. Yeah.
they're not for me. I'm not in their face the entire time. But, the more you think about it, we do want to teach accountability. I don't know if anybody knows this. I haven't really told anybody this. When I first started ACE, I was in bed kind of sitting around, kind of thinking about, what do I call this thing? It's got to have some, obviously, meaning.
Mm-hmm.
ACE is the top pitcher. But then there was also an acronym, too. It was accountability creates excellence.
Oh, no way.
So
That's cool.
what that was I want kids to basically gather the knowledge that we offer, information, but it's their thing. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where, we want to teach them this system. That way they know it as well as we do, and they can do it on their own. So we did lose some kids because it wasn't one-on-one. We weren't pitching in October, but I was, kept pushing process. It's a build-up to pitch off a mound in roughly mid-January. Mm-hmm. And I think the more talent we had come in, hard workers, kids who believed in it, once they have results, they kind of just
Snowballed.
Yeah. So it was very difficult at first. But again, if you believe in it enough, you'll just stay the course, and the rest will take care of itself.
I feel like the older age groups are getting there. So if you think about it, your program is essentially you're preparing like a college program is.
Mm-hmm.
October, January, first games in February.
Right.
Pretty much the same timeline, right?
Right.
Youth, I feel like it's starting to trickle down in that area. We're just not quite there yet. And it kind of scares me because you start hearing these kids that are like 13, 14 years old that are already having Tommy John. Mm-hmm. And because they're literally not throwing for the full year, and they're like, all right, Timmy, let's get up there. It's February. We have
Jump up there
we have a game in April.
Make up for lost time.
Yep.
Yes. And when you go up there, throw as hard as you can because we got to see that fastball.
And they're throwing more unprepared.
Yeah.
Because
that's a good statement, by the way. Throwing unprepared. That's a really good statement.
Right. Or they have the mindset of, I'm going to pitch on the weekends. I'm going to rest during the week.
Right.
And it's
Going to
not
those extremes actually will cause more injuries.
Right.
And would you say it's not the guy that throws hard that we should be scared about? It's the guy that does throw hard and is not prepared when he hops on that mound.
Oh, without a doubt.
You're gonna be in a situation. They're the ones that probably need it the most, but don't realize that they need it. And the younger guys are like, oh, I need to get more velocity, and that's what ends up you get those players.
Right. And some kids throw hard just because they throw hard. They're naturally athletic. They are genetic freaks. But at the same time, I think every kid has a built-in motor for power output. Now, we can help increase that. But the problem is you'll see so many kids who naturally throw hard, but they don't have the hardware. Either they're hypermobile or they lack core strength, flexibility, mobility. It's so hard to tell a kid who naturally is doing that, hey, throw 80% so you don't get hurt. It's like telling a kid not to swing hard or not to run fast. So we really want to push, strength training, which is, again, we're not talking about, creating bodybuilders, but, what each kid needs to maintain mobility, flexibility, sleep, nutrition, all that stuff comes into play. So those harder throwers who aren't necessarily in our eyes built to throw hard, those are the ones that scare me the most. And, you definitely, try to get your message across. I think I was kind of telling Tony, who we'll talk to later on, I think the most important thing is compliance, is you can tell them what they need. Obviously each kid only has so much time to do this. They have school, they have other sports. So it does kind of scare me when those kids, even though we are teaching them how to move more efficiently, their hardware still doesn't support even like very efficient movements. You know,
What's your thoughts on multi-sport athletes?
I mean, I was a sport athlete all the way through high school. I mean, I'm all for it.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, as you get older, I think you have to make some decisions.
Sure.
because that is scary to like go out and say like, oh, we want you to be sports specific, because like again, I was multi-sport, you were multi-sport, you were multi-sport. Like I love those guys, but it gets to a point where if you want to make a run at this thing and you want to do it right, you almost have to say, all right, we're gonna do 2 sports this year, and it can't my pitch. If I'm going to be a pitcher, I got to do my pitching program, because if I don't do my pitching program, I'm SOL. I could possibly have an injury that hops up.
Oh, without a doubt. And, you know, I think as an athlete, like you learn as you get older. You're always looking back like, oh, if I would have specialized a little bit earlier, I could have been more prepared. Or,
but the training's different. That's the thing. Like,
training's different.
I was talking to the doctor that I want to bring on, and he was giving me an example of a guy that he had, and he's a football player and a track star. And his hip flexors were just out of whack, just way overboard. And he was getting hamstring tears left and right.
Right.
And he's like, the reason is because he didn't train. All he did was he did sports, which is fine if that's what you want to do.
Right.
But he's a senior in high school. It's like he needs to start thinking about probably around junior year. Like we need to be a little bit more specific on this. Like we need to actually train the right way.
Without a doubt.
So, anyways, where do you see the pitching industry going? I know we talked a little bit about tech, talked a little bit about Whoop, gave you an introductory to the Whoop strap.
Right.
Where do you see the pitching industry going?
I mean, I guess the right answer is I don't know. I mean, there's been so much change with all the data, all the metrics. I was kind of thinking about this last night. I don't have an answer to that, because it seems like we're tracking everything at the moment. You know, we have mounds with force plates. We have the TrackMan. We have the Hawkeye. We have Rapsodo.
For all those that are listening, all those different products are very expensive, but they do give really good data points and measurements that you're able to say, all right, this is what you need to do. These are the adjustments that you need to make. But anyways, go ahead.
So, you know, something new will come up. I just don't know what that is. It seems like we've almost not covered all of our bases, as in we know everything. It's just I don't know what else you could do to the game where we're tracking things that we're not currently tracking.
I just see it this way. I see it's always a trickle down from the major leagues. So, you know, major league pitchers were introduced to, like you said, TrackMan, Hawkeye. They were able to track spin rates, movement patterns, or add so many different metrics on a pitcher. And 5 years ago, our athletes didn't have any exposure to that.
Right.
We had exposure to one thing only. It was a radar gun.
Right.
And so that's the only measurable that we ever got anything on. And now all of a sudden, that type of technology has become more affordable as it becomes more affordable in the forms of like Rapsodo or Flight Scope or some of the other things that are used at the more amateur levels. People will adopt it. And then now game adoption into that. So you start using that technology, and you're trying, what I've always found is one of the hardest things to do is teach why that technology is useful.
Right.
And educate the player on it. So I'm just kind of thinking, well, what's the next thing? And then how far does that technology go down? Right now, it's like, in my opinion, it can be applicable to some of our high school guys, but some of our high school guys are not ready for that information.
Without a doubt.
You know, like, no offense if you can't step in the same direction twice, I'm not even remotely talking Rapsodo with you. And then, but it's going to trickle down to the youth level.
Right.
And those types of training programs, that's where I kind of see the pitching whole, you know, the whole evolution going, is all this information is going to continue to get passed down. And at some point, you're going to have 3rd through 5th graders on 5-month pitching programs throughout the year learning movement patterns.
Right.
And I don't know if you see it the same way, but
I do see it the same way. And you have to be careful because, I mean, all the data, all the metrics are great if you know how to decipher it. So I think the hardest part of our job is knowing who to introduce it to and who not. You know,
It's a language.
Right, exactly. But you also have kids that are borderline geniuses.
Oh yeah.
If they dive too deep, they forget they still have to get the guy out in front of them that 60 feet.
I
6
think
inches
we
away.
know one is
That's the hardest thing is like it's very valuable. You want them to know it, but you don't want them to fall in love with it. Yeah. Just like you don't want them to fall in love with the old school approach. Maybe, hey, you show up and you throw your gloves out there and you're ready to go. You do a couple of these and you're ready to go. I mean, there's always that middle ground, but you do. It kind of goes back to what I was saying, trying to create customized workouts for these guys, knowing what to give them, what not to give them. Because like you said, like we have kids that can't step in the same spot every time or can't locate even a fastball. So the hardest part is using it, not using it as a crutch, but also knowing which kids can handle it and which kids can't.
Well, and think about it this way too. Think about the types of trainers these kids are having access to nowadays.
Right.
Again, 10 years ago, where were the best trainers in baseball at the pro level?
Mm-hmm.
There was
or they were out of the game.
Yeah, or the other out, but it was mainly at the pro level, and then all of a sudden, it started to trickle down to college, and then you had guys like, Scott Brown and guys who just like the best pitching minds in the world who were at Vanderbilt and Arkansas and all these guys, and then they moved up to pro, and it just kept trickling down, and then all of a sudden you're seeing these academies like what we do with the Tigers and what you do with Ace and everything, and now those instructors have access to the best information. They understand that game, those processes and drive line and everything else.
Right.
It's gonna keep moving. It's gonna keep expanding down.
I've always gone to the fact that because Major League Baseball, DeGrom just got hurt, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's rehabbing back.
He's back now, but yeah, he did something.
Do you think that it's going to get to more injury prevention? How do we
like getting away from velocity only?
Well, you're never going to get away from velocity because
Right.
that's the sexiness. You love velocity, right? Everyone loves power. Well, there's no way we're getting away from that. But it seems like there's a lot of injuries. Is it just me, or I don't know the data? So if you're listening to this, hold this conversation with a grain of salt because there's no data that I have backing up my statements. But just from you have the best pitcher that is throwing 100 miles per hour consistently,
right?
And he's now in the minor leagues trying to get back up on a rehab assignment. That's a little worrisome,
right? I don't think there will ever be complete injury prevention. It's almost like injury reduction. But when you're asking your body to push the limits day in and day out, I mean, of course, velocity is king right now. I'd be lying if I said that wasn't true. I hate it to a certain point because, you get young kids chasing velocity. Mm-hmm. Whereas, we think that we train velocity at all ages technically, because when you teach a kid how to move more efficiently, he should throw harder. Or if he's in the weight room doing the right stuff, he should throw harder. Mm-hmm. So I don't think injuries are going away. I just think, it's almost like the mindset is I have more horses in the stable. If one guy goes down,
that's definitely the
I
way
got a bunch of other guys in the stable.
That's at the college and the pro level, for
right?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's you're an asset. Now, what kind of an asset are you to the program? That's how they value you. But
right.
I mean, that definitely is how it is. But
it's becoming that hitters are more valuable, which is kind of weird because there's less great hitters,
right?
And there's now becoming a vast majority of good pitchers.
And I think to go back on something you just said, I want to make sure we hit this point. You said it's injury reduction. Right. Because throwing overhead is inherently risky. Mm-hmm. Like there's external rotation, there's internal rotation. They're doing it.
We're in the
faster
injury business
rates.
To a certain point.
Yeah, we are.
You got biceps, you got elbows, forearms.
Well, even softball. Dr. Aleem said that. Like that's the biggest misconception is that softball is more of a natural move. Like everyone says that, but it's not. It's not true. Like it could be a natural or more natural move than throwing overhand, but you're still going to have injuries.
I think what you're seeing with guys like Adam nowadays is what he's doing is so valuable because everything that he teaches, even before you ever step onto a mound, is injury reduction. Right. So moving efficiently, like he says, building up, your strength in the different joints and making sure that you're functionally strong and that your movement, that your mobility is correct, your flexibility is correct, all of that. It's never going to just say, nope, I can guarantee that you'll be healthy the next 2 years.
If you hear that from somebody,
run away.
Because, we unfortunately have guys that get hurt too. It's kind of the business. You just want to make sure that, you basically, you don't want them getting hurt because of negligence.
Correct.
You know, we talk pitch counts, we talk adequate rest, we talk about during the week matching up your low, medium, high throwing days.
Right.
Which again, it always comes down to compliance. You get that message across. They're the ones who obviously have to do it, and it's just weird because we have a kid. He's a sophomore in high school, left-hand pitcher. 84 miles per hour last August. He touches 93 2 days ago. And
Wait, what? Repeat that.
Yeah,
He went from 83 in August.
83 to 85. He touched 93 3 days ago.
How tall is he?
6'4".
6'4". Okay. Did he? So he had a little bit of a growth spurt there.
Growth spurt. He gained 25 pounds of muscle. He's moving a lot better. Well, back in February, he touches 91. And I immediately get on the phone, call his dad, who I'd never met face to face. Turns out he's in the waiting room. So I walk in the waiting room. I'm like, hey, listen, he just hit 91. That wasn't the goal.
Yeah.
I just want to let you guys understand that at that age, it does, scare you to a certain point because some kids are just going to do that.
Yep.
I wanted to push the point across, like that wasn't the goal. We're not pushing this to be 92 next week. I'm just letting you know that,
So there's no misconception.
there's no misconception.
Because what people don't understand is like the parent's gonna be like super happy and the kid's gonna be happy like, oh, I threw 91, and Adam's here is like, oh
man,
crap.
Yeah, I mean, and like
This is not good.
Well, and that is
It's great, but it's not
I
good.
just hope it's a kid and parents who are somewhat reasonable and they understand that, okay, this is what my kid's doing. Well, now everything is even more important now. Like you have to check all these things off the list. You're not going out trying to throw 91 every time. That's not the goal with us. Like it's a byproduct of so many things, putting on 25 pounds of muscle, moving more efficiently, eating better, sleeping better. This kid, I'm telling you, he's got a bright future because he does stuff on his own at the same time. I was having a conversation with his dad, and this is unfortunate because you don't see it very often. He still goes out and plays catch with dad. He goes out to a field on his off days.
That's cool.
To play long toss.
That's cool.
And they're doing it the right way.
Yeah.
And that's something I hope he does forever.
Yeah.
well, you for the people who are listening to this and the parents, what Adam just said in the conversation that he had with that parent, I know this industry pretty well. You are not going to hear that from most people. You're gonna more so have the trainer go out there and go, "Hey, Dad, he just hit 91. All the colleges in the world are calling him. Let's get a pro agent on the phone. Let's get it going." That's what you're going to hear.
Say,
Let's get this engine rolling.
92 next week.
I almost wanted to tell him he hit 91. Okay, let's pitch at 86. Let's just stay there for. But you can't. I mean, you can't tell a kid not to throw 100%. That's what he is. Right. Now we have to make sure he checks everything off. Again, all that stuff becomes that much more important because it's happening somewhat organically. I mean, he's being trained. But it's like it's not like velocity at all costs. It's not like, hey, let's do 1,000 running guns 3 times a week. That's not what it is.
It's hard to sell them process at that moment when they can see that they're that much closer to Jacob deGrom.
Oh, it's tough.
Let's take this thing on tour, guys. Right. We're gonna hit 6 cities in 6 days.
Because then you have to talk about schedule and throwing intensity and, throwing frequency. And you just have to make sure that, again, he's not going out there trying to throw 92 the next day or 93. Yep. Like, if it's in there, it's in there. But everything you do becomes that much more important.
Yep.
Off the field.
I like to quote the great book of Marvel, with great power comes greater responsibility.
There you go.
Yeah, without a doubt.
What's the difference between, because this goes on the same line of the conversation, what's the difference between a player that progresses in your program versus the player that exponentially progresses?
Work ethic, consistency, compliance, buy-in. Now, I'm not going to lie. I do believe in genetics. Some kids are natural athletes. Some kids will always struggle. I always give credits to the kids because, again, it's on them. So definitely genetics do play a big part. Biggest thing I think is, again...
Do you think it deals with... Sorry to interrupt you,
No.
but do you think it deals with being tall? Or do you think it deals with, like...
Leverage helps.
Fast twitch muscles?
Right.
Helps.
It helps?
It
so,
helps,
like,
but
a 5'11" pitcher versus a 6'4" pitcher. I'm taking the 6'4" pitcher over the 5'11" pitcher.
Not necessarily.
Athleticism plays a part, strength, all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, like the old Manute Bull, he would have been throwing... Right, 200 miles per hour because he was 7 foot tall.
Yeah.
So it's not that easy, And I always joke with the kids too, and it's not like mass equals gas like you always hear.
Right.
Because sumo wrestlers would be throwing 500 miles per hour.
It's true.
So it's just every kid has different needs. We try our best to give them exactly what they need. But, I mean, I think most kids who progress pretty quickly, they trust the process.
Where do you
the old
put
cliche? I mean,
where do you put what type of value do you put on consistency? Because I think that is one of the most undervalued and under-talked about assets ever.
It's boring. No one wants to talk
consistency's
about
boring. It's absolutely
it's very
boring.
I'm starting to sleep while you guys are talking this about consistency.
It's
right
true,
when you said it, my eyes started glazing. I'm like, oh
It's
crap,
true.
Dave. Way to bring
Well,
this conversation
And
full
that's
circle.
the thing too is I pride ourselves on there's no flash. There's no magic potion. There's no flash. Consistency is everything. I mean, obviously knowing when to call that audible when a kid needs something different. But I mean, consistency is everything. But it's so tough because people want it now. They want that magic pill. So I've gotten to the point where I used to kind of worry about losing kids because they weren't
Seeing results now.
right. But I get to the point where if we lose them, we never really wanted them.
True.
And it's not going to be great for culture.
You're not for everybody.
I
You can't
don't
be.
worry at all about it anymore because I
Yeah.
know that if guys stick to the program, guys who are consistent, they're going to see results. And that's not just velocity. That's obviously pitchability. And that's something else too is
Explain pitchability for the layman listener on this, because I actually did not know this until I started hanging out with Dave a lot.
Yep.
Explain pitchability.
having the feel for pitching. I mean, as an overall pitcher, hitting spots, knowing when to throw the off-speed stuff, knowing how to read hitters, command versus control. I mean, it's a lost art, unfortunately, because it is very, very hard to create. I'm not saying you can't create it, but one thing I was talking about too is I wish there was a way that we could coach these athletes on the field more. And unfortunately, that's not going to happen because obviously October through February, we're stuck inside. We're not their high school coaches. We're not their select coaches. But actually, trying to help them through the on-field stuff. Mm-hmm. Whether it's, setting up hitters, which again, our plan this offseason is to add classroom time. And what that means is probably once every 3 weeks, we'll take time where we all the kids in a classroom. First things first, we'll basically kind of walk them through each phase or each new phase, but then also pick a topic on like how to set hitters up. Basically trying to read hitters' tendencies. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is, like, some of that stuff, if not all of it, needs to be done on the field.
Yeah.
Some kids have it because they just have it. Some kids have it because maybe dad was kind of pushing pitchability or mechanics or something like that at a very early age. But at the same time, I mean, it's also very, very difficult to teach kids pitchability and how to throw strikes. I think some kids, unfortunately, for whatever reason, may struggle with that their entire career.
It's tough.
I mean, so it almost gets to where people think, hey, if a kid's not throwing strikes, he's not being taught to throw strikes. It's more than just movements. It's a mentality. It's confidence. Like, it's very, very hard to throw strikes if you've never really done it at a young age.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's having just been there a bunch of times and doing it over and over and over. I mean,
right.
We are seeing an influx in training, but then I also feel like sometimes we're seeing a reduction in games played nowadays. Mm-hmm. And so it's like it's kind of that give and take. Like, you can't expect a guy to have high pitch ability if they've only thrown 30 innings in the past 2 years.
Without a doubt.
It's just you haven't been there. You haven't seen enough situations over and over and over to understand innately within 2 seconds of what I should do with that next pitch because of the 20 things that I just saw in the last 3 seconds. Mm-hmm. It's really, really hard to expect that out of a young athlete.
What's your guys' thoughts on like innings counts, like counting innings? Is that a real thing? Like, there's a certain limit, and is it based off training or is it based off like your body, genetics? Like, it
should be everything. Yeah, I mean,
because how what should a kid be throwing? How many innings a year should a kid be throwing? Let's just say like
there's no exact number.
A person that trains really well, a person that goes through ACEs
right
academy.
I always tell kids, spring and summer combined, 70 to 80 innings total.
Yeah.
Now, again, 70 innings on an untrained arm can be disastrous. 70 innings on a very well-trained arm would be perfect. Mm-hmm. It's got to be case by case. Obviously, body type, genetics, work ethic all play a huge role.
Age,
everything. All that stuff.
Arm action.
Yeah, I mean, if they're
stress level of the throwing, just everything out there. I mean,
two-way guys,
Yep,
and obviously
for
kind of,
sure.
it takes a lot out of you
Huge.
if you're playing shortstop.
So, like, if you're hitting that 100-inning mark, that's a red flag.
I believe so.
At
the high
ages,
school or
at
under
the
level,
at the high school and younger level.
Yeah.
Right, and that's one thing too. Is like we do have kids in our program who this spring threw up to 60 innings,
Yeah.
which is a ton. Now, what they need to do is have that conversation with their summer coach. Hey, I threw 60 innings.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm good for 10, 20 more, unfortunately. So you do have to kind of be somewhat strategic because you still have a summer to play.
Yeah, I mean, I think with very special guys. I mean, you have some guys in your program that have come out. Like, and Adam hasn't talked about any of the players that have come out of his program, but he's had some of the biggest names in St. Louis and Christian Little, Victor Quinn, like all these guys that are going on to big SEC D1 schools. And he has a lot of guys going D2, JUCO, like he has great arms. But how many of those guys were physically mature enough to handle that type of load?
Right.
And not only keep in mind, yeah, you're throwing the 80 innings in the game, but then all the throwing you're doing outside of there and the bullpens
Right.
and everything, that all plays a count. And you better be incredibly physically mature for at that age to be able to handle that. Because what most of the times we see is those middle July weekend tournaments, our pitchers' arms are just down.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and
All
it's
right.
just it's time for a break.
And like, we'll get phone calls or like kids stopping by during the spring. Why is my velo down? Well, first question is, I don't know because I haven't seen you for a while.
Well, Fitz would say because you're not in the weight room, bro.
And that's exactly. Hey, I mean,
Why is
Probably
my
it.
velo down? Yeah, because
That's-
you're not in the weight room.
and that's the biggest thing too. Is like you have kids, unfortunately, who work so hard for 5 months.
Yep.
Once high school baseball starts, it's almost like they think it's going to last forever. If I just kind of, hey, I worked for 5 months, I'm good to go. And unfortunately, and I watched the podcast with Brian, and it's a lifestyle. Like
Yeah.
lifting, especially, you can lift forever. You can lift your entire life. Obviously, you want to be doing certain things at certain times of the year. Throwing to baseball is kind of the same. I mean, you could throw year round if you're throwing at the right intensity. That's not pitching year round. That's not throwing 100% every day. But I do see kids coming in, hey, my velo's down, or hey, I can't throw strikes. Well, are you guys throwing bullpens at practice? No. Are you lifting? No. Are you doing all the pre and post throwing protocols we gave you? No. I'm like,
And
I don't want to,
Here's the difference between a pro and an amateur: is that a pro knows his body extremely well.
Right.
The amateur is like a baby giraffe.
Without
They
a
think
doubt.
that they can run as fast as they can, but they have all these limbs like going all over the place. And like, I'm running real fast, but I'm not really.
Mm-hmm.
They are the baby giraffes, and they think that they know their body, but they have no idea where their elbow is compared to their knee.
Right.
And
Right.
how to make that adjustment.
Right,
There's
but
a
they also-
select few that can do that.
But they also don't understand, like, all these kids want to play college baseball.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that some of these kids understand how hard it is,
Right.
A, to get there, but like B, to stick. It's a lifestyle.
I've said that phrase a million times. I've been in a million recruiting meetings with parents, and I can tell the players a million times over what it's like at the college level and what your expectation is and everything else. And there's no chance they can get it until they get there.
Right.
They're just never going to understand that experience until they step foot into it.
But you know what's great about chasing that goal is that you're creating those habits for something that you have to do later on down the road because
Yeah.
it is a lifestyle no matter what you go into, outside of baseball. So if I want to make a run at a corporate 500 job
Yeah.
and go to be a CEO, I have to make that my lifestyle.
Without a doubt.
Or if I want to be the top sales rep in my area, it has to be a lifestyle.
You'll
It can't-
understand the process, the competitiveness, the everything
Yeah.
else to it.
And-
all it goes back to consistency. It's not easy. It's
Yep.
just showing up every single day, putting in the work.
And that's why I think like that 7% click is like, if you're that 7%, you know what it takes after the game, which is a very valuable skill that not many people have.
Without a doubt.
Let me ask you something, Adam. So you've obviously I've kind of talked about some of the high level guys you've had come out. Your
Right.
guys who have played professionally, who are playing professionally, who are playing at the SEC level. Your Christian Littles of the world. What types of things have you seen, like commonalities between those guys that maybe like a younger pitcher can take on as like something I'm going to chase?
One thing that I don't see enough of, unfortunately, is kids who actually watch the game, who stay, your POs who stay for the whole weekend, who can just watch the game, guys who watch it on television. But it's not just that, but they actually watch it a certain way where they're like dissecting every single play. Why this kid threw this pitch? Because all those kids will train for the most part. I think what sets those guys apart is just a knowledge of how to pitch, and it's more about watching the game. Because they can come to us and they can learn how to move, how to throw a breaking ball, this and that. But I think what's lost these days is there are so many more distractions for kids. Mm-hmm. You always hear baseball's boring. Well, not to every kid we train. Some kids love it. So I think most of those guys who climb the ranks quicker, they know the game inside and out. They have set goals they want to accomplish, but they know the ins and outs of the game.
It's the ability to observe, right?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Like social media has helped businesses and small businesses. It's helped us. Obviously, we get ideas off of big name people, and we probably wouldn't have had that 20 years ago. Yeah. But baseball, which I think is really interesting, is that is like YouTube. You can literally watch the game, and literally the major league players are communicating to you on this is how you actually play the game.
Without a doubt.
Like Waino kept on crushing the outside corners in the previous game, had a couple sliders, and was able to get that umpire to move his zone even further out from the actual plate.
Mm-hmm. Right.
How many young guys are able to see that and be like, oh, that's why he's doing that. That's why he's crafting those pitches.
They just think the umpire's bad.
That's like the first. Man, that guy sucked. Dad, go yell at him.
That's the thing too. Is I always push these guys to learn from each other. If you stay the extra game and not go home, if you kind of sit there and watch, you can also talk to, pitchers talk to hitters talk to pitchers about what they're looking for. But I think, as much as they learn from us coaches, they learn more from each other. Mm-hmm. Because it's always, you grow up and you're always used to listening to mom or dad or teachers. Sure. You can talk amongst yourself. I think at times those are the best teaching moments, without a doubt. Those guys who just sit and talk baseball,
What's your recommendation for a dad or a mom that, because it seems like every kid pitches when they first start out, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, what's your recommendations on, like, parents and helping their player become pitchers?
Like how they should progress?
Yeah, how they should progress. And the first thing is 7U through 9U. Right. And I think that's probably the most important age. I get that question a lot, and I'm like, hey, I'm not a pitcher. Don't talk to me. Talk to Dave. He's in cage 12. Go talk to him. I can tell you how to hit, but from a pitching standpoint, literally when I started, I just threw. That's all I did, and that's not good advice.
Right. I think starting off at the 7U, 9U, it's a lot of basic stuff: how to stand, how to step and throw, how to hold the ball.
So just playing catch.
And
then being able to hit corners, like just like little spots.
You can try, but like they always, it actually works with my son. He's 5 years old, and I, find myself, and I saw it somewhere else. If you tell him, you give him a certain amount of instructions, not to overwhelm him, throw hard, swing hard. Yep. Put him in the right position, in the right stance.
And just have fun with it.
Just have fun with it, because I think sometimes,
goes back to coach ball game.
Us as parents, we try to overcoach it, overteach it, and now the kids aren't having fun. I have my son now asking me to go play catch and go hit, because you have to know your audience. That's the biggest thing. Yeah, it's like you want those kids to learn as much as they can while also having fun, knowing that they're 7 years old. You're not going to see a lot of strikes. It's just it's so cliche. It's the process over results. Process.
How do you feel about like parents that like, well, I've never played baseball. Should I just give them lessons, like, and just have paid premium price and have them do lessons?
Oh man, that's a loaded question.
I know, like because like for me. Obviously, that's nice because then I get paid and I have a job and everything like that. But at the same time, like, man, you're his dad or you're his mom. Let's grab a glove and just go out there and play catch.
As a parent, I think you have to research, and basically try your best to show up and go to the park. And even if it's him throwing to a fence and not you, just like always trying to be there. Pushing him, and then obviously you sprinkle in the lessons and the camps and that kind of stuff. I just don't.
Camps are a big thing. That's I feel like camps are a huge thing. That's why I like the Coach Ballgame interview because he was teaching, but it wasn't like do it this way or it's over. Your career's done. Let's close up shop. You're not going to play.
Right.
I feel like just getting out there and having fun with it, being goofy.
Oh, camaraderie,
Yeah, and
teamwork, all that stuff.
Playing like little mini games, like, oh, I bet you can't hit this, or
Right.
I bet you can't throw it this far, like that type of stuff.
Right. And I think on the topic of, what parents should be doing, I'm big on parents understanding that it's their kids' activity and it's not theirs. I think sometimes they think a kid's poor performance might reflect poorly on them. It's the kid's thing. I'm big on telling parents and kids, like, show up to the game with a jug of water or a Gatorade. Don't have your parents walk over and give you a Gatorade. Parents, try your best not to coach.
I brought a fruit bar. Everyone
coach
come by. I brought strawberries, grapes, watermelon.
Right. I just can't stress enough, parents trying to let the coaches coach as much as they can. Even if you have a vast background in baseball, just try to, understand it's your kid's activity. Let their coach do the coaching during the game. Like the whole thing that just drives me crazy. We all hear it. Throw strikes.
Yeah, I think the best thing the best piece of advice we've ever given parents is that just be the ultimate support system for
Without
your
a
child. And just like, so your question was, so should they do lessons or should they seek advice or should they just go out to the backyard and throw for the first 5 years of their career? Well, maybe a little bit of all
Everything.
of it.
Yeah,
Right.
I think it's all of it.
And like seek, if you don't understand that topic, well, go seek out an expert's advice in it. Go try and talk to someone. It doesn't mean that you have to initially sign up for 24-pack of lessons and come every week and just go all in on it.
Oh, yeah.
No, just go find a little piece of information and go run with it and then see how your child adjusts to it. And if they're wanting more,
and being creative, like just coming up with some crazy stuff that will get them engaged with it.
Yeah.
I think
Right.
that's super important.
I used to love teaching the kids who parents would actually sit there and like listen.
Yeah.
Parents had no idea what to teach them. They knew it. They weren't trying to pretend, but they would sit there and like listen, and like ask questions.
Yeah.
Those are the customers I wanted to work with the most because
100%.
you knew that there was a really good chance that they would take the information that I'm giving them.
Oh, it's huge.
And use it back home because now next time he comes in, hey, we're going to hit these certain points again, but we can move on.
Yeah.
It's almost like for lessons, it's the parent that gets the most information out of it.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Like, I love it when like example, like they literally just sit there and they listen, and they're really just trying to figure it out. They're not being overbearing to where they want to make the correction, like, oh, make sure you stand this way, make sure you move your foot this way. Oh, your back leg is all jacked up. Like, it wasn't that. Just being able to gather information and then being able to put it in a fun way for their kid to understand it.
Oh, and like back when I was doing lessons, and I get it. Like, I mean, sometimes time is of the essence. Time is of the essence, and you have to drop them off and go run some errands.
Yeah.
But the kids that got the most out of it were the ones that mom or dad sat there and listened to every word you said. They asked questions.
Yep.
They weren't overbearing. Those kids got better.
Yep.
I also think that has to deal with the instructor too, because if the instructor is interesting, then the parent will sit and listen to the instructor.
Without a doubt.
Whenever the instructor is a little bit boring or they're not on the top of their game, that's where I feel like you lose the parent overall.
Oh, definitely, without a doubt.
Is there a time period where you see maybe a shift in the level of seriousness that an athlete should take? Like, is it like, for example, is it middle school ages, or where do you kind of see that, especially on the pitching side?
I'm starting to see it like 7th, 8th grade.
Yeah.
If I had my choice, I guess the multi-sport athletes, maybe around sophomore year of high school, they have to start making some choices. Not to strictly go to one sport, but they have to kind of sit down and figure out how to manage their time.
Priorities.
Make a list.
Yeah.
Sit down, make a list. Like, what can I do? What can't I do? And I think every kid's different. I wouldn't want my son to specialize. I mean, again, sophomore, junior year. But it would also be that much harder to fit everything in. Because time management's huge on these kids. Because
it's very difficult.
Oh, very difficult. Because in the future, they're going to have to figure out, what to make time for.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how my cousin does it. She just accepted a job to be a principal of a new school. She has 2 kids. Her husband does a franchising. Not a franchise. I don't think they're franchise. I think it's corporate. But he runs multiple stores, Italian food. So like, I'm thinking to myself, how do you manage all that?
You just make it work.
Especially for like the kids, because like the kids are all over. They're running all over the place. Like, how do you manage that? Like Kreckmeyer, another like
just-
that dude is phenomenal.
Just
Like,
make it work.
him and his wife are just very good at what they do and how to time manage their schedules plus the kids' schedules. It's just very impressive.
I think you just look at it at the point you don't have a choice not to.
Yeah. So
Right.
kudos
You
to
have
you
to
if
do
you're a
it.
parent listening to this and you have a crazy schedule because
It's tough.
it is tough. Obviously, you have kids. We don't. But
Yeah, and someday they'll play sports and practices are in the evening, so I got to make some decisions because the bulk of our hours are 3 o'clock until 9 or 10. So that's it's gonna be tough.
Where do you see Ace going in the next couple of years? Like, where do you see where do you see the program expanding?
Well, it's actually grown very, very quickly. I wasn't truly ready for it when it happened. It's a good problem to have. I think someday probably moving into our own facility, more space, obviously teaming up with like organizations or have little satellite facilities where we can kind of help teams run their programs or kind of help facilitate that. I wouldn't mind someday adding some hitting development into it too.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be teaching that because I don't know much about hitting, but I think
dip,
be the
drive, and
next step
accelerate.
Pivot. So I think that's the next step.
Yeah.
Also building our youth program.
Yeah.
Right now it's been strictly high school, college, pro. Finding time and space to actually implement some kind of a youth program that somewhat mimics what the high school kids are doing. Obviously, I know that with the youth program, kids can probably only come once a week.
Yep.
High school kids drive, so they can come 2 or 3 times a week. But basing a program off of what we do with the high school kids, but obviously make it age appropriate.
What I am so excited about, and something that we talk about all the time on this podcast, is the experiences that younger athletes are able to get nowadays is outrageous.
Right.
Where they play, how they train,
The
the
memories you
education
create are
and
crazy.
information, the memories. Going back, and Adam, you're older than I am, but going back when I was thinking of my youth experience, it seems like the Stone Ages.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I had a great youth experience, but I went to my local association. I got drafted to play on the Kirkwood Cardinals, and that's where I played my 20 games, and I had a great time. Right, we had one season-ending tournament, and great job.
No travel tournaments,
it's just
no nothing.
It's a totally different, and I'm not that old. It wasn't that long ago.
Right.
But so to me, what gets me excited is the information the younger kids are going to be able to get, the training programs that they're going to have access to, like yours,
Right.
the overall experience of what can basically be given to them that's available. It's going to be really, really cool to see.
Right. Oh, definitely.
Just let everyone know that we have partnered with Adam and here in St. Louis for our St. Louis club. But I do recommend if you want to reach out to him and get a little bit more information and a little bit more advice maybe in consulting. I'm sure that he would appreciate that as well. Adam, go ahead and give him your contact information, best way to reach you. Also give him your Instagram handle because I do love your Instagram handle.
So for right now, we are in the process of creating a website and a company email. Right now it's my own. It's ajahnsen51 at Gmail, which is AJAHNSEN51 @gmail. And then the Instagram handle, which surprisingly I don't know off the top of my head.
Hey, you'd be surprised. Like
why
a
not?
lot of people struggle with that. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, I just created. I just want to post stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like
It's
so no biggie.
Ace Baseball Development is our Instagram handle.
Make sure to go follow that because there is some incredible pitching content on there. Some of the best athletes that I've seen in the St. Louis area are coming through his program, and it's really, if you're a young pitcher or even getting to that point where you're getting serious, it's a great follow.
And we will be bringing on his partner in crime, Tony Katakis, chiropractor, doctor, right? Doctor.
Right.
Yeah.
Doctor.
And we're going to go a little bit more deep dive on this, and that'll be on the Tiger interview series. So if you have not subscribed to that podcast, please go over, subscribe to the Tiger interview series. You can also catch all of these video podcasts on YouTube. We have the Closing Pitch YouTube channel where you can see Dave's pretty face. If you want to hop over to the Rawlings Tigers YouTube channel. That's where we put the Tiger interview series, and you can see my pretty face plus Tim Jones and a number of other directors that are interviewing great people, expert advice. So go ahead and head over there and subscribe there. But I think this is where we're going to end this show.
No closing pitch?
Oh, closing pitches.
Yeah. Adam's not new
I
to that.
forgot about
Closing
that with
pitch.
Coach Paul.
I know you did.
Man, awkward.
I almost let you go 2 in a row. Do you know what we do at the end of this, Adam?
I do not.
So,
Nice little surprise.
so obviously that's the name of the podcast, but we do give a closing pitch, like a recap from each of us as to what kind of we talked about and what
The big
we,
takeaway.
the big takeaway from
Our
the
big takeaway,
podcast.
yeah.
So I'll kind of start with this, and I've known Adam for a long time. What was it been? Ever since I started back in 2010, because you've been best friends with Hacker and Jaws, and I've had hundreds of conversations with Adam, and I love what he's doing, and I hope that a lot of young athletes take note of this in terms of the detail-orientedness that his program brings to the individual pitcher, and I think that just the information, the care, the overall drive to help pitchers of all ages is what Adam's program brings to the table. So I hope you guys check him out. I hope you give him a look up, a listen, a follow. Ask him some questions. Shoot him a DM. I'm sure he'll respond.
Appreciate it.
What's your closing pitch?
Closing pitch. Why
Do you want me to go? Then you can go.
don't you go first?
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. How about you go? I want to hear yours first. Shandy's brother does that all the time. When you want his
Always.
advice, and then he
Always,
goes, "Well, what do you think first?" My big thing is I heard this quote. I forgot who it's from. I'll have to go back into my notes. But heading into the new, like when you're first starting out, reading and learning gave you advancement, right? But right now it's, can you learn, then can you unlearn, and then relearn? That's really where you're going to find the advancement. And going in baseball and going from old school to new school, it seems like a lot of people are saying, well, it's just baseball, let's just go play, right? Right now it's, can you learn and then unlearn and then relearn? And that's how you're going to advance your career. So from this conversation, I've learned a lot on pitching, and I'm not a pitching guy, and how to actually, because I'm very intrigued on, can you prevent injuries? Can you increase velocity? Can you get best of both worlds? And from the conclusion, I'm still not there yet. And it seems like with all this data that we're getting, it's nice to have, but from your point of view, it's, we need to know how to distribute that data correctly so that the kid doesn't go fully deep and then he's just not trying to get somebody out, right?
Right.
So big thing for me is being able to learn, unlearn, and then relearn, being willing to have that vulnerability.
Right. I guess my my thing is to make sure that the parents and kids understand it as a process. I know it's cliche, but it's just basically knowing what to add at the right time. You know, when velo becomes more important. You know, what my 7-year-old should be doing as opposed to my 16-year-old. Knowing that this game is very, very hard. Throwing a baseball is very, very difficult. You know, consistency to me is the biggest thing. Buy-in, compliance. But actually, you know, most importantly, I think finding the so-called experts, you know, people that you trust in, ask those questions. Basically learn as much as you can. That way you try to do your best to do it the right way and you don't rush it. Like, there's no magic pill. There's no magic formula. Consistency, the right amount of volume and intensity at the right time is huge. You know, but this definitely takes time, as it should take time. I mean, if you can slow cook it per se, you've got a much better chance of making it to the next level.
Awesome.
Appreciate it, guys, for you listening. Hit us up on Twitter and tell us what you think of this episode, or send us an email. My email is spiker@rawlingstigers.com. Dave's is dburkby@rawlingstigers.com. We love getting the feedback. If you're here in St. Louis and you're in our facility at Rawlings Training Center or at Balls and Strikes, stop us if you see us walking around. If we have this focused look, it just means that we're moving on to the next thing. Go ahead and grab us, push us into the wall or something, get our attention, and let us know what you think. So until next time, we'll catch you in the next episode.
See you guys.
Thank you for watching or listening or both to The Closing Pitch. If you'd like to get your closing pitch featured on the show, we use a podcasting app called Anchor, where you can submit your statement or question via audio. Or what you can do is comment in the comment section of this post. We also accept direct messages. Please give us the A-OK if you do send us a DM to use your statement or question on the show. Last thing, please give us a review on your platform of choice, 5-star preferably, and we value your opinion, and this allows us to reach more people. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you in the next episode.